Hello everyone. This course is about reading and analyzing skills, and you have to know that more importantly, real reading goes beyond simply pronouncing words. So the goal is to understand the full meaning and force of the language. What's important to know that is reading is a lifelong skill, something which is essential to be used at school and in our daily life. Reading is something more than just recognizing and pronouncing words, and it's about understanding the meaning, which is the force or the true force of the language. For example, a biologist must grasp the precise mechanism described in a research article, like DNA replication, and not just pronouncing the technical terms correctly. What you have to know that reading is an active and complicated process of receiving and understanding information. This means that reading is not passive. It's about the deep comprehension of how words fit together to convey complex meaning. So not just pronouncing or recognizing words on the context of reading skills. Reading involves a complex interplay of cognitive process, requiring decoding symbols, understanding, interpreting, and making connections. The process of reading depends on the two-way dependency, the author's ability to communicate clearly the meaning, using, for example, the appropriate words, and the ability of reader or the reader's ability to actively construct a meaningful and understanding from those words. Here, this is a simple example. The cat sat on the mat illustrates the first two steps of the cognitive process we discussed already. Which implies decoding symbols using recognitions or recognizing letters and words. And the next step is to understand the language. Here we grasp individual word meaning and the grammar and syntax that structure the sentences. So here, for this example, to understand the language, the grammatical analysis of the cat sat on the mat shows a simple subject, verb, prepositional phrase structure, essential for teaching basic English syntax. So using the same example of the cat, here we have what we call the true analysis. Starts with what we call the inferring meaning, where we use what we call the meaning or the context and the background knowledge to deduce what the text implies. It's like saying that the cat is likely is likely relaxing on the mat, so which is the sofa. So what we do after is that we try to make connections, linking the simple sentence to the personal experience or the prior knowledge, which may solidify our understanding and memory of the text. So this second example is focusing on another process, a biological process, photosynthesis, so which is used used by plants. So what we can say here that that there are some complex technical texts used or technical words use, so in the scientific context, of course. So the first step is to what we call to try to decode the symbols, so using oxygen, water, or carbon dioxide. So in this case, the coding symbol is not just recognizing this word, but also the chemical symbols and the chemical equations, of course. So in reading, so we have also to understand the language in the technical text, which requires grasping both the meaning of individual words and the conceptual relationship that define the entire process, like photosynthesis which is a process. So, as we have already said, reading is a lifelong skill, focusing on understanding the full meaning and the force of the language. So, inferring meaning is the highest level of analysis, where the reader, for example, uses the text to draw logical conclusions not explicitly stated, such as why plants are essential for life because they produce oxygen. So inferring meaning is when the reader connects the process of this process of releasing oxygen to the larger idea that plants are essentials or are essential for life on Earth. So drawing an important conclusion not directly stated in the text. So making connection on reading is where you link, for example, the information from this process, for example, to larger, so in real world concepts like energy transformations and the global food chain. Of course, you have to know that the process of reading depends on both the authors and the reader. Of course, it's a two-way relationship. So the author must communicate clearly, and the reader must actively construct meaning from the text. For example, if an author writes, the patient's vitals crash, so you have or he has to understand the words and feel the critical emergency because there is some problem, for example, heartbeat or something related to blood pressure problems. Also, reading is an active thinking process where the reader must engage their brain to fully grasp the meaning, so which only works if the author uses clear and structured language. So otherwise, the author fails to communicate, and the reader cannot fully analyze the meaning. During reading and analyzing, as a reader, you must actively engage your brain. You have to engage your brain and use your background knowledge to construct the full meaning. To construct the full meaning, for example, when reading a story, you infer a character is nervous by their shaky voice, for example. So the author never said they were nervous. So in the scientific context, also in scientific reading, for example, the reader must actively use prior knowledge to infer a paper's conclusions. For example, if a study mentions that the p-value is under 0.05, so the reader infers that the finding is statistically significant, even if the author doesn't explicitly state it. So these are the key aspects of reading. So learning, intentional, active process, task that requires focus and concentration, contextual, a two-way communication between an author and the reader, a two-way communication using written language or symbols, a medium or a way to share information, understanding and interpreting, thinking and reflecting, and making connections to previous experiences and learnings. So we will try to explain each point or each key aspect of reading. So reading is the fundamental tool. So is a fundamental tool we use to acquire all the new knowledge. That's why we say that it's a learning aspects to our life. For example, when reading a clinical text on infertility in a pathology context, so the reader must connect his or her background about the genetic descriptions or description of a hormonal imbalance, so to the functional blockage in the reproductive process. So here we can use what we call the inferent pathological effects. So reading is also intentional. So to make it simple, reading, you have to know that reading is always goal directed. So when we say goal or purpose, the same thing. So meaning your purpose, like finding to find information or solving a task or problem, guides you how you read. So it's related to the purpose or the goal you are seeking for. So as we already said, reading is an active skill that moves beyond simply recognizing words to actively engage your brain by making inferences, and what we call understanding the full meaning of the text. So to using what we call predictions or the critical thinking. So as we have already said, reading is not something which is passive. So it is an active skill that moves beyond simply recognizing words to actively engage your brain by making what we call inferences, and of course understanding the full meaning, the full meaning of the text using critical thinking or analyzing through asking questions, for example, and drawing inferences. Yeah, here you have to know that effective reading requires more attention or focusing attention because distractions severely hinder the ability to comprehend and retain information. So you have to know also that reading is contextual. So authors use what we call clues, des indices in French, like word choice or sentence structure, in order to help the reader to understand the meaning of the text. Here you have to say also that reading is a dialogue. It's like a dialogue between two persons, between the author and the reader. It's a dialogue while the author tries to convey ideas and the reader must actively interpret and respond to create meaningful or meaning to this from the text given by the author. Reading involves also what we call the written language. So the written language, so for example, you can say that the author must use clear, accurate language and symbols, like correctly written scientific reports to be understandable. And of course, the reader's job is to actively engage and use the appropriate or the knowledge and the critical thinking, using, for example, inferring, connecting, to construct the full meaning and force of the text. For example, if the text correctly states a pathology is caused by a hormonal imbalance, the reader must actively connect that written language to the functional failure in the reproductive system to truly understand and grasp the diagnosis. What we can say about reading is the ultimate or the powerful tool for sharing informations, ideas, and stories. So, for sharing complex informations and ideas from one person to another, regardless of when or where they lived. Yeah, of course, reading involves also decoding the text and constructing the meaning from the words or and sentences. For example, when we say the patient's vitals crashed, so this requires understanding the literal meaning. The reader, in this case, must actively interpret must interpret this language by connecting it to their knowledge of emergency protocols and simultaneously recognize that the author choose those powerful words to convey immediate urgency. In short, what we can say that reading is an active skill. It's an active process where you must think critically and connect ideas to create the full intended meaning from the text. As already said, effective reading is a shared responsibility where the author must communicate clearly and the reader must actively construct the meaning using critical thinking and background knowledge. For example, when we say that the patient's vitamin D levels drop to 5 nanogram per ml, so this requires that the reader to connect this number, the level of vitamin D, to the healthy range and infer the likely clinical outcome of severe, for example, fatigue. This to create a meaning and retain information. This is what we call the aspect or the key aspects of reading. Now we move to the types of reading. So, as students, you have to know that for reading information, there are various reading types depending on the speed and the kind of reading. So we have mainly four types of reading: skimming, scanning, extensive, and intensive reading. So this means that reading is a flexible process and you must choose the appropriate reading strategy based on your purpose and how quickly you need the information and to achieve your goal, for example. So these four types of reading are used by selecting the strategy, the speed and detail that matches your specific goal for the text. Briefly, skimming is quickly reading the titles, heading, subheading, the first sentences to get the general overview or the general idea of the text. Scanning is reading a text quickly by looking only for specific facts, figures, or keywords to locate, for example, a particular detail or facts. For extensive reading, which involves reading longer texts frequently, for example, for pleasure, to improve language skills, the vocabulary, and fluency. Like, for example, reading a novel or a magazine to learn about something or a hobby. Extensive reading is analyzing is when you are reading longer texts for the pleasures, for example, or general knowledge. So to improve language skills, vocabulary, and fluency. It's like reading for pleasure a novel or a magazine. So, intensive reading is reading in detail. So, is analyzing slowly and carefully to evaluate and to evaluate details and understand the full what we call the full applications uh, as with a research paper. So when you're reading a research paper, to understand a complex scientific concept, you have to use this type of reading, which is intensive reading. Sorry. So for general reading and research, you should or you must read slowly. Reading slowly, you have to define the ambiguous words, read sentences or the complex sentences. Sorry, you have to actively also sort out informations and take notes to ensure the fully comprehension of the text. During reading and analyzing, there are some what we call barriers. So, because the comprehension is blocked by some factors ranging from, for example, poor concentrations, lack of motivation, to linguistic difficulties and overwhelming or excessive text size. For dialects, for example, dialect differences can act as a barrier during reading by making it difficult for readers to understand the meaning or the specific language usage, the pronunciation, and the vocabulary of the text. So the inability to focus, or what we call the lack of concentration, or the inability to focus on a task, is a critical barrier because it directly causes comprehensive to suffer. For example, using phone or checking a phone makes a reader unable to maintain focus on a pathology report, so causing them to miss a critical detail like a test result value. A lack of motivation is also another barrier, where low interest or without any motivation or enthusiasm causes reader to disengage and fail to retain information. Also, we have the lack of a scientific, for example, vocabulary, like not knowing the meaning of some technical words used in reproduction, for example, or like RT, or poor grammar makes the reader unable to fully comprehend the genetic report, for example, or the problem of fertility or infertility. The size of the text or the large amount of text act as a barrier because they are overwhelming, leading to reader fatigue and decreased comprehension. Where when there are too much information, so the reader may struggle to identify the most important points. So because there are too much informations. That's why for the author, when writing a paper, we have to be concise and clear, using simple words and simple sentences. So to overcome reading problems or barriers, you must set simple goals. Find a goal or a good place to read and use the right reading strategies, and also seeking for help. So you have for example, instead of what we call instead of aiming to read the full paper of 50-page chapter in one sitting, you have to set what we call realistic goal of reading just 10 pages with high comprehension. We have also to create a conducive reading environment, so to avoid the lack of concentration. You have, for example, to turn off your phone and to move to a quiet desk instead of reading on the sofa. So the place, you have to find a good place to read. So we have also to select or to use the appropriate reading strategies to manage the barrier of overwhelming text size. For example, you have to use the skimming strategy to quickly find the key arguments before starting your intensive reading. So you have firstly to select the reading strategy, and we have also to seek for help. Seek for help by asking a professor or a tutor to clarify for clarification on the ambiguous terms. So the ambiguous terms of, or if you face the barrier of lack of linguistic level. So if you have problem with technical vocabulary in a research paper, you have to ask your, for example, your teacher, your supervisor, or maybe you have to use other tools like using dictionary, for example. From the key aspects of reading, the various or the 4 types of reading and the barriers during reading, now you have to know the strategies, or what are the or how to reach active reading. So what are the methods used to reach active reading? So the ISQ3R method is the best one for active and effective reading achievement. So it includes the following steps. So the S survey, Q question, and the 3R, read, recite, and review. To ensure deep engagement and retentions. This method is a popular technique to improve reading comprehension and retain information. So the survey step involves quickly looking over the entire text before starting reading in detail. So in this case, the purpose is to activate your prior knowledge related to the topic and to set expectations about what the main argument and structure of the text will be. Giving an example here, so when approaching a new text book chapter, so you would survey by looking at the titles, the heading, subheading, les titres, le titre, les sous-titres, figure captions, and summary question at the end. So this gives you a quick mental map of the chapter's content. So the purpose of the question step in the SQ3R method is to focus your reading and seek answers. So to give the detailed explanations. So for example, by turning heading into questions, example, changing lack of concentration to why the readers lack concentrations, you give your mind a specific task to accomplish during the subsequent reading step, which significantly improves focus and retention. So the purpose of the read step is to actively engage and absorb information. This is the stage where you execute the plan set by the survey, the previous step in the SQ3R methods or steps. So you read the text fully, paying attention to details and actively looking for the answers to the question you created in the previous steps. So this focused approach ensures maximum engagement and absorption of the material. So the purpose of the recite is to solidify understanding and check knowledge gaps. So in this step, you look away from the text and verbally summarize or recite the main points using your own words, which is very important. So this process forces your brain to retrieve and process the information, which is the best way to solidify your learning and identify any areas where your understanding is weak. So to identify any gaps in your knowledge, the weaknesses I mean. For the final step used in this method which is review. The purpose is to reinforce learning and retain information. So this final step is to systematically go back over the text, over the questions and the recited notes or the summarizing shortly after finishing the chapter. So this repetition will reinforces the learning in your memory, which ensure retaining information over time rather than quickly forget. This is the aim of review when using this strategy or this 5 or the SQ3R method. So to sum, effective reading is a lifelong. So it's something which is essential, intentional, two-way communications involving both author and the reader. So it requires that the reader actively decode symbols, think critically, and ideas to construct the meaning. Successful during or for effective reading depends on choosing the right strategy, like the SQ, the SQ3R or the intensive reading, and actively overcoming barriers like distraction caused by your phone, for example, and the lack of linguistic knowledge. So you have to learning to real word or to read well. You have to use